Hey everybody, today I'm going to show you how to make watercolor bookmarks, and because we are coming up on Valentine's Day, I thought it might be a good way for you to make something nice for your teachers or your friends or your teacher's friends or anybody else that you think might enjoy them. So the first thing we're going to do is talk about supplies. You'll need your watercolor supplies, and mine today are Winsor Newton tubes that have been pre-dried into a separate palette like I have here. Some of the colors I'm going to be using are Vermillion, Chinese White, Permanent Rose, Magenta, Lamp Black, Olive Green, and I think that's about it. Just a basic color palette today. I've already mixed my colors here, and you can see that I'm going towards the really trendy rosy color and gray theme today. You'll also need paper, and this is a 9x12 sheet of paper. You can get about, I think 6 really cute bookmarks out of it with a 9x12. Today I'm using not my favorite paper, but it's paper that's sturdy enough, but I'm not wasting my best paper on this. It's the Strathmore 140-pound cold pressed, and it's the 400 series, which is the brown cover. You'll also need your water. I used two water wells with a cool color and a warm. And I think today this might be the only brush that I'm going to use, which is my Master's Touch round number 12, and I think it's synthetic squirrel. I'm not positive about that, but if you can't find it, text me and I'll find you something comparable. And then I might be using the Princeton round number 6. And then once we get past the watercolor portion, the other preparation you'll need is a cutting board, or if you don't have a cutting board, you can use scissors, a hole punch. If you have just the 3-hole punch, that's fine too. You only need one. This is a corner punch, and I got it for like $3 or something at a craft store. But if you can't find a corner punch, that's fine. You can just have square bookmarks. Embroidery thread. You don't always have to use embroidery thread. You can use ribbon or whatever else you have around the house. And then, I know this sounds funny, but you're gonna need clear tape, and this is also optional. This is to basically cover both sides of the bookmark so that it's a little shiny and more durable, but you can also skip that step. And I got this at the dollar store for $1. So those are the supplies you'll need. And now let's move on to the watercolor portion. I just need to give you a disclaimer though, that I never do double takes. I never go back and edit. This is just like a straight through, and if I screw up, I screw up. A really bad habit of mine is that I tend to call petals and leaves. I call leaves petals and petals leaves, and I do it all the time, so please just bear with me. Okay, so when you're doing bookmarks, you'll want to do an all over pattern, and you'll want the pattern to not be so big that whenever you cut out the bookmark, it only has like one giant color splotch. So you'll want the variations to be about this big in size, so that you have a lot of variety within every cut that you make, if that makes sense. So another thing is that you don't need to go into a lot of detail, but you also need to fill every square inch of this with color as much as you can so that you don't leave a lot of white space, because again, you never know what it's going to look like once it's cut out. So with all that said, I'm going to take my first color, which is Vermilion and Chinese White, and just a tiny bit of Permanent Rose that I've mixed together, and I love this color. And you're just going to start, and I'm doing a really basic pattern like that, and it's just going to be a nice little flowy leaf. See, I did it. A flowy petal. And you'll just do that all over your paper. I'm gonna let it dry a little bit and then come back over with a darker color to add some dimension in the middle. You'll want to space these probably about 1.5 inches to 2 inches apart. You're going to have another color, which is this rose color, come in also, so you'll need to make room for that. You don't really have to worry about being completely random. If you wanted to do straight lines, you probably could, because when we cut it out, you won't know that it was so orderly. I also could do some variations, like showing the flower from a different perspective, but I think just for the sake of time and using this as an example, that I don't love that, but that's okay, because we're gonna cut it out, right? Don't forget about the corners and the sides. We're gonna not use this part of the paper, so don't worry about that either. Always bleed off the page, because we might want to use the very end of this. So this is getting kind of dry, so what I want to do is go in just a little darker, make a darker center, still using the same colors and still using the white to make it that milky color. I'm just making it darker, and then there's my centers. So I'm not used to working with Strathmore, and I forget that the bleeds are different. So we're just gonna take what comes out of it. They're looking cute. Okay, let's clean our brush and go on to this rose color. And then I would love it if my colors bled together. So let's just see if I can do that. Bleeding is fun, right? And when you're doing these kind of bleeds, you want to work quickly, not take a lot of time in between colors, because then once they're dry, there's no going back. This really is the most simple flower that you can do. I can probably do it in my sleep, mainly because it's so easy and I don't have to worry about it being perfect because it's very free. See, it's already so dry that it won't bleed. And that's also something I'm not used to, because I usually work with arches, and arches has a longer drying time. Okay, I'm gonna go just a few more places here, but you can already see that there's holes that we'll need to fill with other colors. So that's where our grays come in. But I don't want that big of a hole because I'm not doing a leaf that big. So I'm gonna make sure, get these closer together, and while we're in here, let's make that darker center, because some of these are already drying up. Yeah, this one is super dry already. You can tell when that, the shimmer, the little glaze that the color makes, starts to go away on the paper. That one's almost dry. Yep, I missed that opportunity. Okay, and while No, I won't. I was going to go back through here, but I think some of it is already dry to the point where if I went through it again, it would create this line here. We don't want that. So there are still some missing, there's some holes. So what I want to do, I'm just being spontaneous here. I'm going to make a darker color. Still has a lot of whiteness to it because I've added that Chinese white, and I'm just going to make a darker flower. Add some variety to it all. And it's probably a little too orange, but that's okay. The gray that we're going to put in there is going to make it nice. And I've done this with a few types of people before. I've done it with like 11-year-old girls with my daughter's youth group, and I've done it with adults, and most of them get hung up on making it perfect when really this is the best practice, because each individual thing doesn't have to be perfect. When you isolate them, they don't look perfect, but when you cut it out and make it into an abstract piece, it looks good. Okay, so I've pinked it up a lot, and I'm going to put a pinkier center in here because I feel like we went a little too orange with that, and I think that'll look really good. Oops, that was an old one, wasn't it? Huh. Yeah, I like that. You can see the paper mounding up. That's interesting, isn't it? Okay, let's move on to our gray. I've made two different grays. The first gray is lamp black and Chinese white, pretty much straight. And then the other one I made was lamp black, Chinese white, and a tiny bit of indigo, which gives it a little blue tint to it. But I think we're just gonna go here, and I'm gonna do a little straight line, and I'm gonna make these guys where I can. Of course, you just kind of fit them in, leaving not a lot of white space. Does that make sense? Here I can do a nice big one. And carry it off the page. And even if there's not space, like right here, there's really not a lot of space to put this, but I need to have this color throughout, because otherwise that means one of the pieces that we cut isn't going to have that color, and it'll be sad that we missed out on that color. Also, make sure that you're putting them all in different directions so that whenever we go to cut out, you can do it upside down. You can find which way looks better, and you have options. But if everything is running the same direction, then you're kind of stuck with putting the top of the bookmark in that one direction. You can put things behind like that also. I do think we might want to put a little bit of green in here, and that's why I did have the option of oops, I love it when I make a too thick stem. So this has a very fine tip, and I can do a lot of really detailed things with it if I just have patience, but lots of times you just slop it on. Okay, so here's a point where we should decide, do we want to add another color? And I think I do. So this color here is like, it's honestly a mixture of all of the greens that I've, like, of the ones that I normally use. Sometimes I do a secondary color here and it ends up just being a big mystery green. So we're gonna call this the mystery green color with black added to it. And then here's our olive green. So I can add a little bit more. Whoa, that's really dark. Probably don't want to do that. Maybe I will, we'll see. Add a little bit more water. I'm almost out of my green, so we gotta let it. Okay, now I think I would just want to fill in with some flowers. I mean, with some petals. Leaves, see, I did it again. I'm so good at this. I get paid the big bucks. Otherwise known as free, for doing this, for getting it wrong half the time. And I like it when there's hardly any white space. So that's what I'm trying to do here. Oh, and also we can decide if we want stems or no. I think I like the idea of stems. How's that look? The thing I like about this brush is it holds a lot of color. So I could do several of these. Well, I got lots of room here. I'm gonna have to go back and work on that area probably. I can do lots of leaves with this one and still have enough where it doesn't, like, you know, peter out at the end. It's great. Great brush. I'm just making it a little darker because I think that's how it was to begin with. We haven't taken a step back. I'm going to finish this little section here that we haven't put anything in yet, and take a step back. Oh, that was not cute. That's okay. Okay. So, looking at it, it looks like the green pops out too much, I think. So one idea is to take the color that's already on my brush and just get my brush wet, and we're gonna go in and find empty spaces and just fill in with some more green that's lighter. And then that kind of brings that green out a little more and makes it seem less poppy. That's a word, a technical word. Does that make sense? Because we don't want that green to stick out so much that you get distracted by it when you're looking. Yeah, that was a good choice. Also, I need to be reminded, should I go back and look for stems? Because I don't know if we put stems on everything, or if it even matters. You guys are probably like, put one right there, but I don't see it. So a lot of this is covered, which is the goal. And now we need to decide if we want to put centers in our flowers. I'm leaning towards yes, because it's not as blended and abstract as I originally intended. And again, part of that is because I'm just not used to working with Strathmore and how it bleeds and how fast it dries. So I think what I might want to do is, it's a gamble, but I want to take this color here, which my brain escapes me right now. What is this called? Give me a sec. Oh, this is raw sienna. And this is a Van Gogh color, and I love it. And this color is also a Van Gogh color. It's Indigo, which has the best, it's really saturated, and so the color, I'll have to show you, but the color is beautiful. Okay, so I'm using straight raw sienna, and I'm just going to do little abstract centers like that, just so they kind of blend into the green. It's not all about the centers. They're just alluding to a center. And they don't stick out. Like if we had done black, it would have popped too much. And you just you don't even have to make a full circle. You just kind of dab and hint around at a circle like that. Does not have to be perfect. So while I'm doing this, I'll tell you about the next part of the process, which will be, we have to let it dry, and then after it's dry, completely dry, then we're going to cut it into our little like 1.5 by 6 inch square rectangles, and then we will cut the corners and hole punch it, add the tape to make it laminated. It's like a cheap way of laminating. And then add the embroidery thread and we're done. Yeah, I think this is really cute and perfect for Valentine's Day, for spring. They're good teacher gifts. You and your children can do this, and you can give them out as class presents. And if you already have most of the supplies, it's essentially free, which I'm all about. Free, especially with Valentine's gifts, because it can get super expensive when you have 3 kids like I do. Okay, so now we will come back after it's completely dry and we'll go over the next part.